Hello, and welcome to Lyla's Lullabies, where we spend time exploring with Lyla, a traveler who wanders the world at her own pace, while sharing her most enriching and restorative moments with you. In tonight's story, we'll follow Lyla as she explores the creative Italian city of Milan. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to remember. Just settle in, get comfortable, and let yourself go. We're so glad you're here. Whenever you're ready, let's begin. The train from Venice glided into Milano Centrale just before 10 in the morning, the station's cavernous Art Deco interior swallowing the sound of arrival and transforming it into echoes. Lyla stepped onto the platform and paused for a moment to take in the architecture, the soaring ceiling with its steel and glass, the marble floors polished to a gleam, the sense of grandeur that seemed quintessentially Italian. Even the train station felt like it was making a statement about beauty and design. Her friend Sofia had texted that she'd meet her at the central exit, and Lyla found her easily, standing near a newsstand, dressed in what looked effortlessly chic but was probably carefully considered. A long camel coat over black trousers, her dark hair pulled back in a low bun. When she spotted Lyla, her face lit up, and she crossed the space in quick strides to embrace her. "Lyla, finalmente, how was the journey?" "Beautiful. I love watching the countryside from the train. How are you? How's the program going?" "Intense but amazing. I'm learning so much. Come on, let's get out of here. Milan is waiting." They stepped out into the October morning, and the air was crisp without being cold, that perfect autumn temperature that made Lyla glad she'd brought a scarf. The city hummed with purpose around them, people moving with direction, well-dressed, even in casual clothes, the general sense that Milan took itself seriously when it came to presentation. "I thought we'd start with the Duomo," Sofia said as they walked toward the metro. "It's touristy, but it really is fantastic. You can't come to Milan and not see it. And actually, October is a good time, not as crowded as summer." They took the metro to Duomo station and emerged into Piazza del Duomo, and even though Lyla had seen photos, nothing quite prepared her for the reality of the cathedral. It dominated the square, an explosion of white marble and Gothic spires, every surface carved and decorated, hundreds of statues looking down from their perches. The facade was almost overwhelming in its detail, saints and gargoyles and intricate tracery, all of it rendered in stone that seemed to glow in the morning light. "It took almost 600 years to complete," Sofia said, looking up at it with the kind of affection that suggested she never tired of the view. "Every time I see it, I notice something new. That's what I love about design. There are always more layers to discover." They joined the line to enter, moving slowly forward, and inside the cathedral was just as impressive, vast and soaring, with columns that rose like forests of stone, stained glass windows that cast colored light across the marble floors. The scale was immense, designed to make you feel small in the presence of the divine, and it succeeded. They walked through slowly, Sofia pointing out details. A particular sculpture she loved, a chapel with frescoes that had recently been restored, the way the light changed depending on the time of day. Other visitors moved quietly around them, some praying, others simply absorbing the space. "Do you want to go up to the roof?" Sofia asked. "The views are spectacular, and you can see the spires up close." They took the elevator up, emerging onto the rooftop terraces, where walkways wound between the spires and flying buttresses. Up here, you could see the craftsmanship even more clearly. Every statue carved with individual features, every spire decorated with its own patterns. And beyond the cathedral, the city spread out in all directions, a mix of historic buildings and modern towers, the Alps visible in the distance as a hazy blue outline. On clear days you can see all the way to the mountains, Sofia said, leaning against a railing. To remind you that Italy is more than just amazing coastlines. They spent a while up there, walking the terraces, looking at the views from different angles. The October sun was warm, despite the cool air, and Lyla found herself relaxing into the day, letting go of the train journey and settling into Milan's particular rhythm. Back at ground level, they walked across the Galleria Vittorio Emanuele II, the famous shopping arcade that connected Piazza del Duomo to Piazza della Scala. The Galleria was stunning, a cross-shaped arcade with a glass and iron roof, the floor decorated with mosaics and luxury shops lining both sides. Prada, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, all the names you'd expect. Their windows dressed with the kind of attention to detail that made each one a small artwork. This is where tourism and fashion meet, Sofia said, gesturing around. Beautiful, but not really where Milanese people shop. I want to show you some other places, the spots where actual designers and students go. They paused in the center of the Galleria, where a mosaic of a bull was set into the floor. A small crowd had gathered, and people were taking turns spinning on the bulls. Wait, what? Lyla wasn't sure she was seeing correctly. Yes, spinning on the bull's balls is a tradition that's supposed to bring good luck. You have to do it, Sofia said, grinning. It's required. Lyla laughed and took her turn, spinning 3 times as tradition dictated, feeling slightly ridiculous but also charmed by the ritual of it. Around her, other tourists were doing the same, everyone united in this small act of superstition. They continued through to Piazza della Scala, where the famous opera house stood, elegant and understated compared to the Duomo. Sofia explained that the opera season was starting soon, and the city was already buzzing with anticipation. Even the outside of the building seemed to hum with the weight of all the performances it had hosted, all the voices that had filled its stage. Now, Sofia said, checking her phone, let me show you the real Milan. We're going to Brera. They walked through streets that grew quieter and more residential, the buildings painted in warm ochres and faded pinks, shutters open to the October air. The Brera district had a bohemian feel with art galleries and small boutiques and cafes, where people lingered over espresso. Sofia led her down a narrow side street and stopped in front of a small shop with a window display that was minimalist but striking. A single dress on a mannequin, beautifully cut, in a fabric that seemed to change color as you looked at it. This is one of my favorite places, Sofia said, pushing open the door. The owner is a designer, makes everything herself, very small production, very high quality. Inside, the shop was intimate and carefully curated, with maybe 20 pieces total. Dresses, blouses, trousers, all in natural fibers and muted colors. The owner looked up from a table where she was hand-stitching something and smiled. Sofia, come stai? Bene, bene. Ti presento la mia amica Lyla, è in visita da fuori. The woman came over and greeted Lyla warmly, switching to English with barely an accent. Welcome. Please look around. Everything here is made in the studio upstairs. If you have questions, let me know. Lyla browsed slowly, touching the fabrics, linen and silk and cotton, all of them feeling substantial and well made. The construction was beautiful. You could see it in the seams and the way the garments hung. Sofia pulled out a jacket in deep burgundy and held it up. "This would look amazing on you. The color is perfect." Lyla tried it on, and Sofia was right. The cut was flattering, the color rich without being overwhelming. She studied herself in the mirror, appreciating the craftsmanship, even if she wasn't sure when she'd wear such a piece. "Think about it," Sofia said. "No pressure. But if you want it, she ships internationally." She winked at Lyla. They spent a while longer in the shop, talking with the owner about her process, about where she sourced her materials, about the challenges of running an independent fashion business in Milan. Her passion was evident, and Lyla found herself drawn to that, the idea of making beautiful things carefully, resisting the pressure to produce more and faster. Outside, they continued through Brera, stopping at a small gallery that was showing work by contemporary Italian artists. The pieces were abstract, mostly large canvases with color and texture, some incorporating found materials. Sofia studied them with a designer's eye, pointing out compositional choices, the way certain colors interacted. "Fashion and art aren't that different," she said, standing in front of a particularly striking piece, all deep blues and sudden slashes of gold. Both are about making choices, about what to emphasize and what to leave out. They wandered into the Pinacoteca di Brera, the art gallery housed in a grand palazzo, its courtyard serene with a statue of Napoleon at its center. Inside, the collection was stunning Italian masterpieces from medieval times through the Renaissance. Mantegna's Dead Christ, with its dramatic foreshortening, stopped Lyla in her tracks. The perspective was so unusual, so bold, she could have stood there for an hour just absorbing it. Sofia was equally absorbed by Raphael's Marriage of the Virgin, pointing out the architecture in the background, the perfect symmetry of the composition, the way every element served the whole. "This is what I try to remember when I'm designing," she said quietly. "Everything has to serve the vision. Nothing can be arbitrary." They moved through the galleries at a contemplative pace, not trying to see everything, just letting themselves be drawn to what called to them. Caravaggio's Supper at Emmaus with its dramatic lighting, the kind that made the figures seem to emerge from darkness. Bellini's tender Madonnas, their faces serene and knowing. When they emerged back into daylight, the morning had shifted into afternoon, and Lyla realized she was hungry. Sofia seemed to read her mind. "There's a place nearby that makes incredible panzerotti. It's tiny, always has a line, but worth it." The place was indeed tiny. Barely more than a window in a wall with a few high tables where people stood to eat. They joined the line, which moved quickly, and soon Lyla was holding a panzerotto, the fried half-moon of dough, crispy and hot. She bit into it carefully, and molten mozzarella and tomato flooded her mouth, perfectly seasoned, the kind of simple food that was transcendent when done right. "Oh my," she said, once she could speak. "This is incredible." Sofia grinned. "I know, right? I come here at least once a week. It's my study break reward." They ate standing up, watching the street life of Brera flow past. Students with portfolios, older residents with shopping bags, tourists consulting maps. The October light had that golden quality, that made everything look slightly romantic, slightly timeless. After lunch, Sofia wanted to show Lyla more of her favorite fashion spots. They walked to the Porta Nuova district, where old industrial buildings had been converted into studios and showrooms. Sofia led her into a building that looked abandoned from the outside, but inside was full of creative energy. Fashion studios on every floor, the sound of sewing machines, and the smell of fabric and coffee. "This is where a lot of young designers work," Sofia explained. "It's like an incubator. Everyone shares resources, gives each other feedback. Very collaborative." They climbed to the third floor, where Sofia's studio was. A small space she shared with two other students, tables covered with fabric swatches and sketches, a dress form in the corner draped with something in progress. Her roommates weren't there, but the space still hummed with their collective work. "This is what I'm working on now," Sofia said, showing Lyla a series of sketches. "It's for my thesis collection. The concept is about transformation, how clothes can help you become different versions of yourself." The sketches were beautiful, confident lines suggesting movement and structure, notes about fabrics and colors scrawled in the margins. Lyla could see the thought behind each piece, the way Sofia was working out, not just how they'd look, but what they'd mean. They left the studio and continued exploring the neighborhood, stopping at a vintage shop that specialized in archival designer pieces from the 80s and 90s. The owner knew Sofia and greeted her warmly, immediately pulling out a Gianfranco Ferré jacket she thought Sofia should see. "Guarda questa costruzione," the owner said, showing them the interior of the jacket, where the structure was visible. "Questo è vero sartoria." Sofia examined it reverently, showing Lyla the precision of the tailoring, the way the fabric had been manipulated to create shape without bulk. Even Lyla, with her limited knowledge of fashion construction, could appreciate the craftsmanship. They browsed for a while, Lyla finding a silk scarf with a geometric pattern that she couldn't resist, Sofia trying on a pair of vintage Prada heels that fit perfectly, but which she ultimately decided against, probably for budget reasons, though she didn't say so. The afternoon was advancing, the light growing softer and more golden. Sofia suggested they walk toward the Navigli district, where the old canals were lined with bars and restaurants. "It's one of my favorite parts of Milan," she said as they walked. "Feels less corporate, more lived in, and the aperitivo culture there is perfect." The Navigli emerged gradually as they walked, first one canal then another, the water reflecting the buildings that lined it, bridges arching across at regular intervals. It was undeniably picturesque, and as the late afternoon turned toward evening, the bars along the canal began to fill with people, the energy shifting into that pre-dinner mode that Italians had perfected. They found a spot with tables outside, right on the canal, and ordered Aperol spritzes and a selection of small plates. Olives, cheese, prosciutto, little squares of focaccia. The drinks arrived glowing orange in the golden hour light, bitter and refreshing, and they settled in to watch the scene unfold. People strolled along the canal, some walking dogs, others clearly on dates, groups of friends laughing and talking. A man sat on a bridge with a guitar, playing something gentle and wandering. The whole scene had a quality of ease to it, of people who knew how to enjoy the transition between afternoon and evening. "I love this time of day," Sofia said, sipping her spritz. "Especially in October. It's not too hot, not too cold, and the city just feels, I don't know, content with itself. They stayed for another round, talking about Sofia's studies, about Lyla's travels, about the strange and wonderful ways life took you places you hadn't planned. The light continued to change, becoming bluer, the first lights beginning to glow in windows and on the bridges. "Ready for dinner?" Sofia asked eventually. "I made us a reservation at a place I love, very traditional, the kind of spot where locals go. Not fancy, just really, really good food." They walked away from the canal as evening settled in properly, the streets now lit by street lamps, and the warm glow from restaurant windows. The trattoria was tucked away on a quiet street, its exterior modest, just a simple sign and a few tables visible through the window. Inside it was cozy and welcoming, with exposed brick walls and wooden tables covered in white paper tablecloths. The waiter greeted Sofia with clear recognition and showed them to a table near the back, bringing them water and a basket of bread without being asked. The menu was handwritten, changing daily based on what was fresh and seasonal. Sofia ordered for them both after a brief consultation, and Lyla was happy to defer to her knowledge. The meal began with a plate of burrata so fresh, it was still slightly warm, served with roasted cherry tomatoes and basil, drizzled with olive oil that tasted green and peppery. They spread it on the bread, the cheese creamy and rich, and Lyla made a small sound of appreciation. "I know," Sofia said, smiling. "It's dangerous. I could eat an entire meal of just this." The preemie course was risotto alla Milanese, the classic saffron risotto that was the city's signature dish. It arrived golden and creamy, each grain of rice maintaining its integrity while contributing to the whole. The saffron gave it a subtle floral note, and there was bone marrow in it somewhere, adding richness and depth. "This is the dish I judge all Milan restaurants by," Sofia said. "If they can't do a proper risotto alla Milanese, they can't cook. This passes the test with honors." For the secondi, they shared an ossobuco, the braised veal shank falling off the bone, served with cremolata that added brightness to the rich meat. The marrow in the center of the bone was considered a delicacy, and the waiter brought them small spoons specifically for extracting it. It was intensely flavorful, almost too rich but somehow exactly right. They ate slowly, savoring each course, pausing between to sip the wine Sofia had ordered, a red from Piedmont that was earthy and complex. The restaurant filled up around them, the sound of conversation and laughter, and the clink of silverware creating a pleasant ambient noise. "This meal," Lyla said, sitting back with her wine, "is one of the best I've had in a long time. Thank you for bringing me here." "It's my pleasure. I'm so glad you came to Milan. It's amazing to share my city with you." They finished with panna cotta, the custard wobbling gently on the plate, topped with a berry compote that was both sweet and tart. An espresso, of course, served in small cups with perfect crema, strong enough to cut through the richness of the meal. Outside, the night had fully settled in, and Milan had transformed into its evening self. The streets still busy, but with a different quality now. People moving between venues or heading home, the city lights creating pools of gold against the darkness. They walked slowly back toward the center, not in any rush, enjoying the night air and the pleasant fatigue of a day spent walking and looking and experiencing. Sofia pointed out buildings she loved as they passed. An Art Nouveau facade with its characteristic curved lines, a contemporary building that somehow worked next to its historic neighbors, a small piazza where she sometimes came to sketch. Tell me more about your thesis collection, Lyla asked as they walked. Sofia thought for a moment. I think it's about how we use clothes to become who we want to be. Not in a superficial way, but clothing can give you confidence, can help you step into a role, can communicate things about yourself that are hard to put into words. Fashion at its best is a tool for self-creation. I like that. It makes it feel meaningful rather than just, retail therapy. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to do with my work. Honor that power, while being responsible about it. Sustainable materials, ethical production, things that last, beauty with purpose. They reached the area near Lyla's hotel, the streets quieter here, mostly residential. They stopped in a small park where a few people were sitting on benches and sat for a moment themselves, neither of them quite ready to end the day. The air was cool now, carrying the October night smells of the city, distant cooking, the faint scent of someone's cigarette, the particular smell of old stone buildings. Somewhere a church bell marked the hour, its tone deep and resonant, and Lyla counted the chimes. 10 o'clock. The day had passed in what felt like minutes. Thank you for today, Lyla said, for showing me your Milan. That's the only way to really see a city, Sofia said, through the eyes of someone who loves it. And I do love it here, even when it's difficult, even when I'm stressed about deadlines and money and everything else. There's something about Milan that makes you want to create, you know? The city itself is always creating, always transforming. They sat for a few more minutes, comfortable in silence, before Sofia stood and stretched. I should let you get to your hotel. Early class tomorrow, and you probably want to rest. They walked the last few blocks together, and at the hotel entrance, they hugged goodbye, the kind of embrace that acknowledged the gift of a day spent together, of friendship maintained across distance and time. Don't be a stranger, Sofia said. And let me know if you want that burgundy jacket. I can pick it up for you and ship it. I'll think about it, and you keep me updated on your thesis collection. I want to see it when it's done. Lyla watched Sofia walk away, her silhouette disappearing around a corner, and then turned toward the hotel. The lobby was quiet, just the night clerk reading something behind the desk. She took the stairs to her room, suddenly aware of how tired her feet were from all the walking, but it was a good tiredness, earned and satisfying. In her room, she opened the window to let in the night air, cool and fresh. She could hear the sounds of Milan settling, distant traffic, voices from the street, the occasional motorbike. She thought about the day, about the Duomo's impossible detail and the Brera's quiet streets, about handmade dresses and ancient paintings, about risotto that tasted like the city itself, golden and rich and carefully crafted. She stood at the window for a while, looking out at the Milan skyline, the mix of old and new visible even in darkness, lights glowing in windows where people were living their lives, creating their work, becoming themselves. It was a city of transformation, Sofia had said, and Lyla could feel that, the way Milan honored its past while constantly reaching toward its future, the way it insisted that beauty mattered, that craft mattered, that the daily work of making things excellent was worth doing. The October night air carried hints of winter approaching, but for now it was perfect, balanced between warmth and cold, between what had been and what was coming. Lyla breathed it in, this moment, this city, This day that had been exactly what she needed, without knowing she needed it, and felt grateful for the friends who opened their cities like gifts, who shared not just places, but ways of seeing, ways of being in the world.